Welcome, I'm Todd Raphael with ERE Media. If you don't know of us and you find this video embedded somewhere, as often seems to be the case, we're at ere.net, among other domain names like tlnt.com, sourcecon.com, FordyceLetter.com. So Todd Raphael, ere.net, with here Stephen Rothberg from collegerecruiter.com. We're talking about Facebook. What else do people talk about nowadays but Facebook? So here we are talking about it ourselves. It's a place where, it seems to me at least, more and more intensely controversial arguments are going, inflammatory even, angry sometimes, and friendships are going to die in some cases. Friendships, relationships that are being fostered between employees, between colleagues at different companies, people you meet, and prospects and recruiters, hiring managers and employers. Those blossoming employment relationships are also going to die, it seems like, because you realize that what someone said on Facebook in a post or a comment or a like is something that you just can't stand. And so we can keep on pretending, I think, in my view, that employers just hire the best person and they don't really care what the person's views are, but I think that's bogus. I think that this is a big deal, and this is something we should be talking about. What are your thoughts, Stephen, on what's going on on Facebook and how that does affect recruiting and the kind of when I say the blossoming relationship, not just the recruiting, but the long-term building of a community relationship with someone on social media?
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with you that there are a lot of heated discussions that take place on Facebook, not just between people who know each other personally, and it doesn't have anything to do with work, but also between people who don't know each other outside of work, whether it's within a company or it's just people they know from a conference. You know, that there are people that I meet at ERE conferences a couple of times a year that I'm friends with on Facebook, and we can agree on a lot of things and we can agree to disagree on a lot of things, and every once in a while it definitely spills over into the, well, we probably shouldn't have gone that far type of conscious. But I see Facebook not as the cause of some of these heated discussions, but I see it as, if you will, a symptom or just another place where our increasingly polarized society is going to vent. When I get into some of these heated discussions, sometimes I have, if you will, buyer's remorse or speaker's remorse, if you will. Yeah. But I think it is usually not, I'm usually not intending to change the opinion of the person that I'm disagreeing with. If you're really dead set in your ways, and you're, not in that 2/3 middle, but you're in that upper 5%, and no matter what anybody says to you, that is just your view and you aren't going to change it. And if I'm at the polar opposite, we're just going to talk past each other. And hopefully that doesn't break down. But when I do that, have a conversation like that, I'm usually trying to sway the opinion of the people who are lurking, the people who are listening to the conversation and not actually actively engaging in it.
You say that it's not the cause, but I think that you often meet people at a conference, at a party, online, LinkedIn. You become friends in some cases on Facebook, and you find out more about them than you ever would have known,
yeah,
but for social media and for Facebook. So maybe it's not the cause, but it's certainly a place where you're getting to know people quicker and more deeply than you would have otherwise. And I do think that's where employment relationships are happening. I mean, that's what we talk about constantly on publications, that social media is for the long-term fostering of a pipeline and of community. And so this is all about recruiting, and you are getting to know more about the person often than you maybe thought you would want to.
Or should, yeah. In some cases. Yeah. And I don't think that's all a negative thing. Yes, our society is becoming increasingly polarized. I saw a study probably a week ago from the, I think it's the Pew Research Center, if I remember their name correctly. I was just going to think of them as Pew, not PU, but Pew. But there was a study that they published roughly a week or two ago that essentially said that since 1980, more rich people are living with rich people, more poor people are living with poor people, and there's sort of a shrinking middle-class neighborhood. And by middle class, they were, or my characterization of their study was essentially you have a neighborhood with a lot of truly middle-class people, with a sprinkling of rich and a sprinkling of poor people in that neighborhood. And we become polarized, so we're losing that sprinkling on both ends. And I see the online conversations as being quite similar. People are moving into their respective camps. Yes, there's a sort of a two-thirds in the middle that maybe they don't have a strong opinion on the particular topic that they're talking about. Maybe they're just not comfortable discussing it. But then you've got, half of that third that's advocating for perhaps a conservative position, and half of the other third advocating for a really liberal position. I don't think that that's necessarily a negative in the employment arena. If you're a person who's fortunate enough to have a choice in what kind of a job you hold and with what employer, I think it's a good thing to know before you perhaps even apply, and certainly before you accept a position, if your values are going to be consistent with theirs. So, if they are a very regimented, very conservative organization and you are an anarchist, better for you to find that out before you apply, and certainly better before you accept a position. On the other hand, you could be a great employee and not be all that involved in politics and see something that your boss posts that really outrages you.
Yeah.
Maybe you're female and your boss posts something that is just terrible about women. That can and probably should destroy your employment relationship with that person, and may lead to a heated argument online, may lead to you quitting, may lead to a wrongful termination. So I think that Facebook makes it easier for potential employees, existing employees, and employers to discover more about each other than they ever would have, which makes it easier to have those conflicts. On the other hand, let's say you are that anarchist kind of a candidate. Wouldn't it be great for you to learn about employers that had a similar culture, so that you can gravitate toward that, coffee shop, that manufacturing company? Probably not too many banks that would be looking for anarchists to join their ranks. But I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing that people know more about each other before they enter into an employment relationship, or even while they're in an employment relationship.
Yeah, all these people who are writing books call me and they say they want my advice, that I should give them advice for job seekers. And they tell me that everyone's giving them advice to job seekers to not say anything about politics or religion, abortion, gay marriage, and politics, and Republican, Democrat online. And I always say the opposite. I always say, no, I don't care if I'm the only one. I think you should be yourself. And you should say what's on your mind. And that's what I always tell these book publishers. Now, you should do that only if you're not too crazy. If your views are that extreme and that intense, yeah, absolutely that's going to turn some people off. And maybe, like you said, you need to find an employer who's accepting of that. But I mean, the honest answer, it does come down to what your views are, of course. I mean, the more intense they are, and the more frequent you're talking about those intense views, the more people you may turn off. Again, conversely, as you said, the more you may need to find someone who's okay with those views.
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to find somebody, no matter how extreme their views are, who would think of themselves as being other than moderate. Some people take pride in being extremists, and they will say, I am extremely liberal, or I am extremely conservative. Yeah. But you're probably talking now the 1% on either end of the equation, not a third even. So I think it's kind of hard to look yourself in the mirror and accurately say, I'm an extremist and therefore I should keep my views to myself, or at least not put them out, publish them in a way that everybody can see them. But I agree with you. I think it is important to be yourself. I got into some heated discussions in the last few days on Facebook with mostly, real friends, personal people, and also some work people. It's possible that conversations like that can cost you a job. In our case, I'm one of the owners of collegerecruiter.com. It could potentially cost us a bit of business. I think it can also get you friends. It can help you find a job, and it can help you find business. There are definitely always going to be the consultants, the experts that view the world as being glass half empty.
Right.
I view the world generally as being more glass half full. I'm prepared to take some losses in order to get some gains. And I think in our times, there's so many important issues out there. You mentioned gay marriage, abortion, etc. That I think it's more important to do the right thing for yourself, your family, your community, than it is to maximize your profitability. I mean, we need to be in business. I need to provide a livelihood to my family, and for our employees. So I don't want to jeopardize that. But if we lose a couple of percent in profit this year, and I help the lives of some people who need helping, I am totally cool with that.
Do you think, in closing, the last question, do you think that we are probably going to start coming to a point where we're going to come full circle and people are going to start stepping back and saying, you know what, I friended this person on Facebook. I didn't think enough about it. I friended these 10 people, these 20, these 30. You know what? It was cool. I was on a roll. I was joining Facebook, or I was getting more into it. And now that I'm rethinking it, I don't know. I think that was a mistake. I need to pare back. Do you think that's going to happen? I don't know if that's the right thing or the wrong thing, but do you think that's kind of what people are going to start rethinking that strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there will definitely be people who will pay closer attention to who their friends are.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to do that on Twitter unless you like lock it down and you only approve people manually. But it's a trade-off. Do you want to have as great an influence as possible over public opinion? If regardless of which side of the abortion issue you're on, do you want to convince people who have not yet been convinced that your position is the better position?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, if you only talk to friends, true friends, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to have much influence because they're probably of like mind. You have to reach out to the people who you're somewhat disconnected with, because I think those are going to be the people who are the most likely not to share your views. And that doesn't mean you're diametrically opposed to them. You're not going to convince those people. But the people who haven't yet made up their mind, those people can be swayed. And if you want to better your community and the world we live in, those are the people that you want to talk with. So I think if you're the kind of person like I am who does want to better your community and the world, then you need to be able to be willing to take some punches every once in a while, in return for being able to get your word out and hopefully having a positive impact.
Very interesting. Thanks, Stephen. Stephen Rothberg, collegerecruiter.com.
Thanks, Todd.